Hello again, welcome back to Illegally Cited. This is BGFH, and I'm back again for an iOS video. And this time, I want to show you guys a little bit of both some of the mainstream and accessibility changes that are in iOS 8. So I'm going to be using my new iPhone 6 Plus for this video. We are going to get AirPlay going really quick. And there we go. Let's do this in landscape so you have more to look at here. Move that mouse off to the side. Alright, so let me turn VoiceOver on here for the most part. We'll be using VoiceOver.
Home button to the left.
So, immediately, because of the newer hardware, you notice that when I turn VoiceOver on, one of the new features in iOS 8 is that newer devices, the iPhone 5S, the iPad Air, and the iPad 6 and 6 Plus all can use the Alex voice. The Alex voice is new to iOS, but it is the default voice that you hear for on a Mac. So any Mac users will definitely find Alex to be a familiar voice. And I gotta say, for being a pretty, a more natural sounding voice, the performance is still very good. It's very responsive.
Shopping folder, 8 apps, 1 new item. Double blindness folder, 7 apps, low vision folder, books folder, productivity folder, movies, music folder, 3 apps.
I'm just
Double tap to
sliding my finger around on my icons here.
Shopping folder, 8 apps, 1 new navigation folder, 5 apps. Double tap to open.
We'll crank it up even more here for you.
Shopping folder, navigate travel folder, 6 dock, settings. Double Safari. Mail. Phone. Double tap to open.
So pretty responsive overall. Now, there are definitely some iOS 8 bugs, both mainstream iOS 8 bugs and VoiceOver bugs. I can't begin to go through all of the little minor bugs. I really haven't encountered too many, but I know there's been a lot reported. I've reported a couple myself to Apple. And if you're interested in a list of comprehensive bugs, if you really want to do that kind of justice, just to kind of find out what to expect, go to AppleVis, AppleVis.com, and there on the main page there is a link to the forum thread, something like iOS 8 bugs, serious to minor, or something like that. And it's a whole list and a whole discussion of some of the bugs that are found in iOS 8. Overall, if you have an older iOS device like an iPhone 5, 5C, or 5S, it's up to you whether you really want to update or not. I upgraded my iPhone 5 right away and really didn't have a problem with it. The performance definitely wasn't as good. I noticed a little bit more kind of delay in some cases. A little bit more, or a little bit lack of responsiveness in some areas, like when closing an app and then just, going back to your home screen, there'd be a second or two delay at times. I don't notice that near as much on the new phones, but overall iOS 8 ran pretty well, and it seems to have run a little bit faster since, because Apple has since released a couple of minor updates. They had iOS 8.01, which we won't talk about because Apple completely broke things for people. And they had to subsequently release iOS 8.02, which addressed some of the things they broke in 01. So iOS 8.02 is out now, and that's the version that you would get. So yes, there are some bugs, mainstream, accessibility-wise, and otherwise, whatever. But I really haven't found any of them to be a major deal breaker. If you use a Bluetooth keyboard or Braille display, you may want to hold off. That's the one reason that I would say you may want to hold off if you use those types of devices a lot with your iOS device, because I have tried with a keyboard and I've tried with a Braille display, and I have definitely noticed a lot more lag than there used to be. I haven't tried it since the iOS 8.02 update, but in iOS 8 in general, there were definitely some keyboard issues, especially responsiveness issues. So you may want to hold off if you do a lot with your keyboard, but if you're primarily using the touchscreen, you should be, for the most part, okay. Yes, you're going to encounter some glitches here and there, for sure. I encounter them as well, but you should be okay. If you have an iPhone 4S or earlier, or if you have like an iPad 2 for sure, maybe even an iPad 3, I would not recommend upgrading to iOS 8, because it'll technically run on an iPhone 4S. I think it technically runs on an iPad 2, but I have not done it on any of my devices of that, but everything that I've seen, video, tweets, articles, and otherwise, says that you really don't want to do it because the performance is pretty awful. So back to iOS 8.
Blindness folder, 7 apps.
Alright, so obviously if you're looking at the screen visually, one of the first things that you'll notice is if you have the iPhone 6 Plus, the home screen does support an interesting kind of landscape view here. We've got the home screen. I can still
Page 1 of 3, App Store.
navigate by pages by flicking with 3
Page 2 of 3,
fingers.
Blindness folder, page 3 of 3, Game Services folder, 4
I
app,
can
page
do
2
all
of
that,
3,
no
Blindness
problem.
folder, 7
But
apps.
my dock
Double
is
tap to open.
actually on the right-hand side. It's going down the screen vertically, which is kind of a different thing to get used to. But it is there. So if you want to use the home screen in landscape, you can. Now, smaller devices, the iPhone 6, the iPhone 5, 5S, and 5C, or the 5th gen iPod Touch, you're just going to get the traditional portrait orientation there. If I bring up my...
Spotlight.
Now, interestingly, while the home screen supports landscape, for whatever reason, the Spotlight search doesn't. So
Portrait.
I have to go into Portrait if I want to use the QWERTY keyboard. I don't know if that's intentional. I don't know if that's a bug, but there you go. Now, the other thing you can do with the Spotlight search is it's supposed to be a little bit more intelligent. Honestly, I haven't played with it a whole lot on my new devices yet, but in addition to finding like your apps and documents and things, it can also do like web searches and kind of give you more broad results that way. So that's another addition that they have changed.
Blindness folder, 7 apps.
Let's go back into landscape,
Landscape. Home button to the left.
and I'm going to open up my settings area.
Settings. Double tap to open. Settings.
Now you notice again on the iPhone 6 Plus, because I have this nice 5.5 inch larger screen, I have 2 columns. So just like the iPad mini or the iPad Air, I can have a left and a right column, which I kind of like. And there are other apps that take advantage of that, and I think more will as time goes on and app developers update their third-party apps. But the main ones that I know that do it for me that I use right now are the Mail app and the Settings app. Those are the main 2 that I use, that I sometimes will use in landscape orientation. Now, because I have settings open, one of the other features that iOS 8 has added, which I kind of like, is if I hit the home button twice,
App switcher.
app switcher. So we have our app switcher as we always have. I can touch the
Home. Running.
home
Settings. Running.
and
Swipe
settings.
up with
Those are the only 2 apps that I have running. However, if I visually look above that, or if I flick to the left,
Home. People. Eric. Button. Sean. Button. Harry. Button. Chris. Button. Mom and Dad. Button. Network extender test. Button.
so I have a
Communicate
whole
with network extender test. Buttons will appear to
hush. I have a whole list of recent and my favorite contacts. So if I add some of my contacts to the favorites area of my phone app, and if I have some recent calls that I've made, some of those people that I've communicated with, I can quickly pull up without going into the phone itself. So it's kind of like a quick way to communicate with people. Now, there is one kind of a minor bug that can be really confusing for voiceover users. If a contact has multiple phone numbers, let's say, associated with them. So you heard
Mom and Dad. Chris. Button.
Mom and Dad have
To communicate
one.
with Chris. Harry. Button.
Harry has
Double tap to
one.
communicate with Harry. Buttons will.
And both of those have multiple phones associated. They may have a home phone, a cell phone, etc. And when you open up that, if I were to double tap on Harry or Mom and Dad, it would bring up a list of my call options, but when I flick or touch them with VoiceOver, it just says call phone or whatever it says. It doesn't yet differentiate between home and work or however you have them labeled in your phone app. So it's kind of a mystery at this point as to which number you're calling, and hopefully that'll be fixed in a future VoiceOver update. Kind of a minor thing, but can be confusing. So let's pop back into our settings here. And I am going to...
Control center. Do not disturb. Button. Selected. General. Button.
Okay, we're in General. I do want to at least show you, or at least talk about some of the accessibility updates that they've added in iOS 8. There are some nice things in here.
Hand off and suggested apps. Button. Accessibility. Button.
Let's go into accessibility.
Settings. VoiceOver. On. Button.
So VoiceOver, let's start by there. So a lot of the stuff is the same.
VoiceOver practice. Button.
VoiceOver
Speaking
practice,
rate. Heading.
speaking rate,
Speaking rate. 35%. And speak hints. On. Use pitch change. On. Use sound effects. On. Speech. Button. Braille. Button.
Now, if you go into speech, that's where you're going to find the new Alex voice. And keep in mind that if you do want to use the Alex voice, you may want a fairly large device, a 64 device or a 128 if you're going to be using a lot of stuff, because the, 930 or it's almost a gig for just that Alex voice. So yeah, it's kind of big.
Rotor. Button.
Rotor.
Typing style. Touch typing. Button.
Now under typing style, they've added a third typing, which actually confused me when I was doing my initial setup. You have your touch typing, which is what you're familiar with and which is what I and a lot of other people prefer. You have your, where you have to double tap each letter to type it. And then you have direct touch typing, which I wasn't sure what it was at first, but basically that's kind of almost like a pass-through way. So let's say that like you're using VoiceOver, but you can see well enough to use the traditional keyboard. And if you can do that, you don't have to slide and lift up and find it. If you can hit the keys directly, you can do direct touch typing. So there you go. Third typing option there.
Phonetic feedback. Character and phonetics. Button. Typing feedback. Button. Always speak notifications. Off.
All these are
Double
pretty
tap to
much the
toggle setting.
same.
Navigate images. Always. Button. Large cursor. Off.
Now,
Double tap to
large
toggle
cursor, this is sort of interesting. So if you like having that little outline as I'm flicking through these items list, if I had to turn that on, look at that thick cursor now. I mean, you can't help but you're not going to miss that. So if you really want to know what's highlighted and you want to rely on that visually, you can turn that really bold cursor on, and there you go. I'm going to turn mine back off, but so those are your VoiceOver settings. Now, one thing I also didn't mention about keyboards, and I haven't really gotten to play with because the keyboard I really want to use is, let's just say with iOS 8, the accessibility is not quite fixed yet. They kind of broke it again. Flexi. I covered that on an earlier video. And with iOS 8, you are now able to use third-party keyboards as your default keyboards, with the exception of a few areas like entering secure information, entering, like usernames and passwords. Then you're going to use the traditional Apple keyboard because they just want to make sure that they have, if you're entering secure information, they don't want to give that control up to third-party keyboards in case it's however it's used on their end. So to keep that more secure for you. But for text entry, for that kind of thing, you can use third-party keyboards, including in VoiceOver. They have a Braille touch typing keyboard, so you can turn your, and this is something I haven't really played with a lot yet. It's kind of cool, but I haven't quite warmed up to it yet. You can add in your rotor, you can add, you can still use it with a refreshable Braille display, but you can also now do Braille input directly onto the touch screen using multi-touch. So it's a rotor option that you can turn on, and then when you're in an edit field, you just turn, just like you would go to your typing mode and choose what you wanted there. Or if you were in a typing field and you wanted to choose handwriting, you now also have Braille as an option, which is kind of cool. And it's definitely something I want to play around with a little bit more.
Accessibility. Back.
Let's go back.
Settings. Heading. Zoom. Off. Button.
Now, here is Zoom. They did some pretty cool stuff in here. And I hope to God that this is going to work.
VoiceOver off.
I'm going to turn VoiceOver off for this part of the demonstration because I want to show you some of the a couple of cool things that they've added for Zoom. And I'm just hoping this shows up on the recording, because I know sometimes capture software has problems accurately capturing the magnifier. Aha! We can capture Zoom. Excellent. Okay, so I've zoomed into my screen. Now remember when I was doing the demo before, I could use my 3 fingers, pan around. I can still do that. And we're getting a little bit of display lag again. So hopefully that irons out a little bit. Seems like anything kind of magnification related, my recording app has a little bit of trouble with that. And hopefully that'll iron out after a minute or two. Come on. There you go. Okay, I think it's largely caught up. Now you may have noticed that in the lower right hand corner, I've got this cool little circular thing, and I can drag it, I can move it around to wherever I feel it's comfortable. But what this is kind of a cool way. Remember one of my complaints about the original gestures, I'm taking 3 fingers and moving them around. So especially if you don't have an iPad or an iPhone 6 or 6 Plus, you've got one of those smaller devices. Well, one of the reasons I don't use Zoom that much is because, well, I have my 3 fingers. They're in the way, and so they're largely blocking what I would see on the screen. With this little thing in the corner, there we go. Now I can treat it as like a little joystick. So what I'm doing is I'm moving my finger, and you can actually see, if you're looking at the lower corner, you can kind of see where I am moving my finger around. And it's a little bit, I'm looking at the, it's kind of hard to do when I'm looking at my computer video. Oh. You are telling me that I'm low on battery. Cool. 20%. We should be okay. So if you want to use the joystick, you kind of have to tap it and then move really quickly. to get the joystick thing to get bigger so you can move it around. If you tap and hold for a little while, then you're actually moving the little joystick icon, because like when I first started it, it was kind of in the middle of the right hand side of the screen, and I'm like, well, I don't really like where that is. I'd rather kind of have it off in the corner. And I did find out that you can visually drag it around. So that is, I think that's a really great feature, because even on the bigger screens like this, it's a way to, like I said, shove your controls right in the corner off to the side, and you can still use your magnifier and not have your fingers in the way. So definitely like that feature. I'm going to turn zoom back off, and I'm going to turn voiceover back on.
Home button to the left.
So I do want to show you a couple of other things here.
Follow focus on.
So
Double tap to toggle
they've
setting.
added a few settings here, some of which I'm not completely familiar with yet.
Zoom keyboard off. Double
So
tap
now-
to toggle setting.
Zoom keyboard, if I'm understanding what this is supposed to do, and I have played with this a bit and I haven't got it to work correctly, or at least the way I thought it worked, is when you are zooming, remember that when you were zooming full screen like I was before, if you had the keyboard up, it was kind of hard to use because you were trying to slide around the screen and the keyboard and type, and it was just kind of cumbersome. Well, now I think what you're supposed to be able to do is where it will magnify the screen but keep the keyboard small, so you're still looking at your website or your app magnified, but you can use the traditional keyboard, and that way you don't have to pan around and you can still much easier enter information. I don't know why that's not working for me, but I've tried it a few times and I just haven't really got it to work yet. But theoretically,
Zoom keyboard
that's
off.
what's supposed to
Double
happen.
tap to show controller on. Double tap
Show
to toggle
controller, that's my little joystick thing that I just showed you. Pretty cool. Really glad they've added that.
setting. Idle visibility 50% button.
And then you can say idle visibility, so when you're not moving around, you can kind of have it fade out or whatever.
The Zoom controller allows quick access to Zoom controls. Bullet tap once to show the Zoom menu. Bullet double tap to zoom in and out. Bullet when zoomed in, drag to pan zoom content.
Okay?
Zoom region, full screen zoom button.
Now, zoom region, you can do full screen, which is the traditional way of doing it, and the way I generally prefer to do it. You can also choose to zoom window, where kind of like if you're using Zoom Text or Magic or any of these other magnifiers, you can just have like a virtual magnifying glass and move it around the screen. And I tried this a little bit, and I really didn't like it, to be honest with you. I don't know if it was just the controls, or I just, you have a little screen, even the 5.5, it's a big screen, but it's still smaller, and then you're only using a fraction of that as magnified. I don't care for it, but I'm sure some people will really love it.
Maximum zoom level, heading.
Maximum zoom level, so you can actually set, like, okay, I only want you to zoom in so far.
Maximum zoom level.
That's
index,
new.
Adjustable.
And there we go. So that's some zoom
Accessibility,
options.
back button.
Back.
Settings, heading.
Let's do,
Voiceover, on, button.
I'm going to just go through the main accessibility thing here really quick, just to kind of make sure I didn't miss anything. I know they've added a few other odds and ends here too.
Zoom, off, button.
Zoom,
Invert colors, off.
that's the
Double
same.
tap to toggle
Invert
setting.
colors if I want to.
Grayscale, off.
Oh yeah,
toggle
grayscale. They've
setting.
added that. So that's kind of you know what? Actually, I've never thought to combine those. Now that I think about it, let's try something. This is going to be new for all of us here.
Invert colors, grayscale, off.
I'm going to turn
Double tap to toggle
grayscale
setting.
on. So now we're going to lose all color, and everything is going to be a shade of gray. But now,
Invert colors,
what
off.
if I invert colors?
On.
Now let me go back to my home screen.
Blindness folder, 7 apps.
Let's go to
Dock. Safari.
Safari.
Safari. Back. Button. Weather Underground. Visit. Link.
Ah.
Page 1 of 33.
Okay.
Search. Button. Page 1 of 33. Search. Button. Weather Underground. Visit. Link. Image. Page 1 of 1. Page 1 of 1.
Okay, so it looks like, yeah. If I combine, now we're not getting, oddly, we're not getting the same picture.
Safari. Double tap to open.
We're getting grayscale. Well, we're getting, we're getting some grayscale, it looks like, but the picture is not looking the same on the video as it is on my phone.
Dock. Settings.
Let's go back into
Double
settings
tap to open.
here.
Settings.
Yeah, so the recording software, it's not honoring
Invert colors. On.
my
Double tap to toggle
inverted colors. And the grayscale, I still see color, that little highlighter on the left on general there. Yeah, so unfortunately, it's not honoring, the video software is not
Tap
honoring
to toggle setting.
my color changes here in this case. But what I kind of find interesting, what I tried to do is, remember when I said, when you're inverting colors, it's going to invert everything. So let's say if you have a blue background, it's going to turn it yellow. If you have a red background, it's going to turn it, I don't know, blue or something. Or, it's just, you're going to get some really wacky colors, especially on wallpapers or image-heavy websites or something. So maybe you want a dark background, but then all of your images look messed up. Well, if you turn grayscale on and then you invert colors, you'll keep things grayscale, but then you can invert them as well, and it seems to actually kind of keep things toned down more to a, white on black color scheme that a lot more people are comfortable with, and you're not going to get some of those, really wild, like, oh, here's a weird background, so it's going to actually become bright yellow when I'm inverted or something.
Speech. Button.
So that's kind of cool. Now, speech in iOS 8, let's say that you're a low vision user and you don't use VoiceOver very much, or you don't, but maybe you want to just have some speech for longer items like web pages or emails, it has a feature where you don't have to turn VoiceOver on, but if you do the standard 2-finger flick down, even with VoiceOver off, if you turn the speech feature on, you can basically have it do a read all from where you are. So that's actually pretty cool. So it's kind of a thing of like a speak it tool, or like, yeah, hey, just read this long thing that I have.
Larger text. On. Button.
Larger text,
Bold text. On.
bold
Double tap to
text,
toggle
those
setting.
are still the same.
Button shapes. On.
Button shapes,
Double tap
that
to
was in
toggle
iOS 7 or 7.1 or something.
Increase contrast. Button.
Increase contrast, those are things all that I've enabled.
Reduce motion. On. Button.
Reduce motion, these are iOS 7 things that are just returning.
On/off labels. Off. Hearing. Heading.
And we got a hearing section.
Hearing aids. Button.
Hearing aids.
LED flash for alerts. Off.
I think a
Double
lot
tap
of
to
these
toggle
are the
setting.
same too.
Mono audio. Off. Phone noise cancellation. On.
Phone
Double
noise
tap to toggle
cancellation.
Noise cancellation reduces ambient noise on phone calls when you are holding the receiver to your ear. Adjust the audio volume balance between left and right channel. Video descriptions. Off. Button.
Now, I don't exactly know what that is. I don't know if that means, like, if you get something through iTunes, a video through iTunes, if maybe there's a possibility for descriptive videos for people who want it. I don't know. I think there's still some speculation around that setting, but it's intriguing nonetheless.
Learning. Heading.
Learning disabilities here.
Guided access. Off. Button.
Guided access is still there.
Interaction. Heading. Switch control. Off. Button.
Switch controls.
Assistive touch. Off. Button.
Assistive touch.
Call audio routing. Automatic. Button.
Okay, call audio
Home click
routing.
speed. Default. Button.
home screen. I think all these are the same.
Reachability on. Double tap
Oh
to
yes,
toggle
reachability. Okay, so let me go into portrait here,
portrait.
and let me go to my home screen.
Settings. Tap
So
to open.
when you're using an iPhone 6 Plus, or maybe even the 6 to some degree, if you have small hands, one of the things that people complain about is that you are using it. If you try to use it one-handed, it's tough, if not impossible, to get your thumb all the way up to some icons that are on the top of your screen, especially in portrait. So what you can do is, with the new devices, that the 6 and the 6 Plus, you have the fingerprint sensor that they did on the 5S as well. In addition to your fingerprint security stuff, you can tap, not actually hit the home button, but if you just tap it twice, you hear it make that little shh. So I'm just tapping it, not actually hitting the button, but touching it twice. And that's the reachability. So what it does is it brings the top half of the screen down to the lower half, so that all these icons that I now have at the top of my screen, I can actually get at them with my thumb or my finger, however I'm holding it. So it makes it a little bit easier to use one-handed. I thought it was a little bit gimmicky, I thought it would be a little bit gimmicky, but it actually does kind of work. Interestingly, though, if I do it, it doesn't bring the status bar at the top down. So if I wanted to swipe down to bring my notification center, I would still have to use my phone two-handed and kind of, use it that way. So, there's a lot of new stuff in iOS 8. The keyboards, the better camera support. There's really just all kinds of stuff. I wanted to put more of an accessibility spin on this first look at iOS 8. Couple of the other things that you can do. Let me open up the notification center.
10:23 p.m. Status bar item. Notification center.
All right.
Today button.
Now I'm on the Today screen. Now another thing with some of these apps, I really haven't gotten a chance to really play with it much, but the notifications, they can be interactive. So instead of having to go into the app, like if you get a text message or something, you can just reply to it right from the notification center. So you don't have to open messages, go find the thing, or jump to it and then reply. You can do it right from the notification center. But if I go to the
Today button.
Selected
Today 1 of 2.
You finally have support for widgets, just like you do in Android. Finally, yay! So again, it's something that I really haven't gotten to play with much, because there aren't a whole lot of things out there that have good widgets yet, or widgets that I would use myself just yet. I did want to put something up there just to say that I had something and just to see how it worked. And I have a Yahoo weather thing, which visually looks really cool. I like the way that it looks, but unfortunately...
Weather information is not available. Weather information is not available.
Okay.
Sorry. Weather heading. Sorry. Weather information is not available.
So we're getting weather information is not available. I'm not sure why normally it would tell you like the temperature and a couple of other things. But what I found before was that VoiceOver was not reading that very well. So some of these widgets may or may not be accessible, just like with any app. But what happens is,
calendar heading.
I have nothing in my calendar.
Rows 2 to 4 and 4.
But you can always see what widgets you have on your device, and it's based on the apps that you have installed.
Edit button.
So there's a big old edit button down on the bottom.
Today.
And then it brings up a list of, so if I start at the top,
Today summary. Swipe up or down to select a custom action.
These are things that I have on my home screen that I have enabled. I have the Today summary.
Delete traffic conditions. Traffic conditions.
Traffic
Swipe up or down to
conditions,
select a
you know
custom
what, I
action, then
probably,
double tap to activate.
because I really don't drive and I always take the bus, we'll just save some space, we'll remove that.
Remove button. Weather.
Weather,
Swipe
we'll
up or
keep
down to
that.
select reorder weather button. Delete reminders button.
And you can reorder them
Tap to
too,
delete
so if you
item.
want to make sure that something is on top, is higher up in the list, you can reorder them, and I've done that. It's really not that bad.
Reminders.
Reminders.
Reorder reminder. Delete calendar. Calendar. Reorder calendar. Delete tomorrow summary button.
And then down here, if I go
Tomorrow summary. Do not include heading.
do not include, and then if I were to keep flicking right, it shows all the widgets that I have potentially on my device, but that I haven't enabled. And when you install an app that supports a widget, it doesn't enable the widget automatically. So in a way, I kind of like that because I don't want to clutter up my home. I don't want to clutter up my notification center all the time. So I can just go in there periodically and check and see, oh, hey, there's a widget for this. And if it's something I actually find useful, I can just add it.
Insert traffic conditions button.
So I can put traffic conditions back.
Traffic conditions. Insert audible stats button. Audible stats.
I'm just going to use my finger to
Swipe
cheat
up or
here.
down to select a custom action,
Audible
then double tap to
stats.
activate. Dropbox.
Dropbox, I could get notifications for there.
Evernote. Swipe Kindle. Swipe up stocks.
Evernote, Kindle, and Stocks. So those are the apps that I have on my phone, but that I have chosen not to enable their little widget. So that, I mean, potentially, I think that could be kind of a nice, convenient way to do some things. And I think that some of these can be made to show up on your lock screen, but I'm not entirely sure, or if that's coming. But, you know, I know a lot of people wanted more interactive notifications because, you know, if you got any kind of notification that required any sort of interaction, you always had to go to your notification center, look at it, and then tap the thing. It would open up the app, and then you do your thing. So it's just a more convenient way to get around. So, I mean, I think those are some of the major things that I can easily demonstrate to you with iOS 8. There are some other things, a lot of the connectivity stuff and iCloud Drive and everything that are a little bit harder to. I don't even fully understand iCloud Drive, to be completely honest with you, because I thought what I was hoping that iCloud Drive was going to be was I thought there would be an app for it on the phone that would show up kind of like a Dropbox. And, you know, it says, oh, you can put any kind of file in there and make your folders. But I think you can do that on the computer if you're on a Mac or PC. But I tried looking it up on the iCloud website, and I tried trying to figure it out on the phone or an iOS device. And it seems like if you're on there, you can't just create a folder and put stuff in there. On the iOS side, it actually still seems to be where you're tied to an app. Now you can look at and edit things, like if you have something saved in Pages, let's say, but you want to be able to bring it into another app and really edit it. I don't think you have to make a copy. You can just use it from that other sandbox, the Pages sandbox, but I don't think there's a way to just put a folder structure there and then use it that way. So it's still not quite what I wanted, but you know, I mean, there's still things like Dropbox and everything. Really, I figured out how to do most things. The only thing that I really can't figure out how to do, and that I would love to be able to do without iTunes, is I would like to be able to email myself or Dropbox or iCloud, whatever, put in some M4R files for ringtones and just pull them into my iOS music library or whatever on my phone, so that my phone and my settings app will recognize them, so that I don't have to use iTunes, but I can just, you know, if I get a new device like I just did now, I can just pull that in and then re-associate contacts and ringers and notifications and things like that, and have my custom ringtones that I've made myself in the past. But Unfortunately, it seems like iTunes is still the only way to do that, and that's the one thing that I can't quite figure out how to get around. So if anyone has any tips or knows of a way to do that with iCloud or iCloud Drive or however, to get your phone app in your iTunes or however it is on your phone to see it without using iTunes for the PC, do leave a comment or do let me know, because I'm very curious. So you have the iCloud Drive. You have the whole connectivity thing, which isn't really available for Mac yet because Yosemite is not out yet, but will be. But one of the things, if I have my iPad and my phone, I have them all set up with this connectivity thing, and it surprised me the first time it happened. If my phone rings, it'll come up on my phone, of course, but because my iPad is also kind of sharing some kind of a connection partnership with my phone, my call will actually show up on my iPad as well. So I've got my phone on my desk, but I'm sitting on my couch watching TV and playing on my iPad or whatever. I can just hit the answer button right on my iPad and answer my phone call via speakerphone that way, which is kind of cool. I mean, the call quality is maybe not as good, but for convenience sake, if you're just away from your phone or whatever, it's kind of neat. So that's kind of a cool thing. And once like I said in my earlier video, you're going to eventually be able to support Wi-Fi calling once the carriers like Verizon or T-Mobile or Sprint, AT&T, once they support it, you'll be able to support Wi-Fi calling. So there's some of this under the hood. There's a lot in iOS 8 that is not necessarily immediately noticeable by the end user, but there's a lot more under the hood as far as development goes, both for, like games and multimedia, more open access, not quite as much sandboxing, the whole connectivity, the whole kind of developers getting more access to the camera, apps being able to share content more easily, content and files more easily between each other, the whole using the notification center and widgets, that kind of thing. So there are a lot of little things under the hood that are just going to make, I think, especially once developers take more advantage of it, I think there's a lot of things that are going to make things even better. So looking forward to see how that turns out. So before I wrap up, I know I haven't covered everything, and if there's something glaringly obvious that I missed, I'll try to come back to it at some point. But like I said, I mainly just wanted to give you kind of an accessibility overview of a few things that they've added and that I've been able to play with, and some of it I've been able to show to you, and some of it I really haven't been able to. Some of it is a little bit buggy, like the third-party keyboards and accessibility, so maybe I'll do that in a later video. But overall, I mean, yes, there are some bugs, and I've encountered a few. If I'm in Safari, I've had it happen in Safari a fair amount, especially if I use the back button or use my kind of back gesture. I've had the app crash on me, or VoiceOver will just freeze up sometimes. And I've had VoiceOver just freeze up a little bit on occasion. I think I had it happen more on my 5 than I did with my 6 Plus. And keep in mind that this was when I was using my 5, I was using iOS 8.0, and now they're up to 8.2, or 8.02. So maybe they've addressed a few of the initial stability issues. It does seem, since the 0.02 release, I skipped 0.01 and went to 0.2 just because of all the crap I heard it breaking a lot of things on the 6 and 6 Plus that 0.1 did. But went from 8.0 to 8.02, and I think the performance is slightly better. They've maybe fixed a few bugs in general. Not really VoiceOver bugs per se, but just iOS in general. Things seem to run a little bit better. VoiceOver doesn't stutter or doesn't lag as much. Just seems a little bit more responsive overall, But a few bugs I've encountered, like I said, I've encountered the crashing a little bit. I did have on a phone call where I was using a dial pad, there's a bug where if you're using the keypad, and now unfortunately I was on a call and I was trying to do there's like some automated survey for a call that I had just made, and I was trying to hit a 1 to confirm something, and what happens is if you have voiceover on, and I forgot about this, sometimes it'll be like the key will stick and it'll just like, or just, a whole bunch of times, and you have to try to hit another button, and sometimes that works and it'll make it quit, but definitely there's a weird issue with the phone dialer sometimes there. Most of the time, 99% of the time, I'm just using my contacts that are already entered, so I don't notice, but if you are making a lot of phone calls that uses the dial pad with voiceover, you may encounter that issue. Otherwise, like I said, the keyboard lag, I've tried it with a Braille display and a keyboard, and there's definitely some responsiveness issues. It's really, really, really laggy, and some of it doesn't even really seem to work at all. Some keyboard commands don't work at all. So that's something that they're definitely going to have to address in one of the next major iOS updates. And hopefully they do that fairly soon, because I like to use my Bluetooth keyboard with my phone. Like I said, if you want a comprehensive list of all the bugs that people are finding, both accessibility and just overall wise, they're out there. Go to AppleVis and look up the thread. Go elsewhere on, see what kind of bugs people are encountering. But, overall, I really haven't had that many. I guess the only other one that I've really found fairly consistently was sometimes, now I don't have anything in my notification center, but sometimes there are certain buttons that are either on a web page or in an app or sometimes in the notification center where I can double tap them, I can triple tap them, which sometimes works. But sometimes the buttons don't want to activate with VoiceOver the way they used to. And I don't know why. I can turn VoiceOver off, and thankfully I have some vision, so I can usually get to the point where, okay, I can see, now that I know where it is, I can touch there and it, boom, turn VoiceOver off, it works great. But I've had a few problems where VoiceOver does not register activating an item sometimes. And I've heard that, I've heard people mention that as well, I think on the AppleVis forum as well, so yeah, that's, like I said, that's kind of a rough overview. I know it's not a comprehensive look at iOS 8 by any means, but I just want to give you, like I said, a little bit of an overall, some of the new features that I really like and that they've added. And then I wanted to just show you a few accessibility changes that they have made in iOS 8. So I think we'll wrap it up here for now, and should there be more, or should I realize that I missed something major, I will come back and cover that, at least talk about it, if not demonstrate it for you. And maybe once they fix some of these bugs, like accessibility, working with these new kind of keyboards, I'd love to demonstrate the updated Flexi app and show that to you as an integrated keyboard instead of it just being its own app. So hopefully once they do that and it works again with VoiceOver, I would really like to use that myself and be able to show that on the channel as well. So anyway, I think we'll wrap it up here, and until next time, like I said, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Like the video, subscribe. Until next time, I will talk to you guys again later.